Well, in Florida, the iguana population is growing year by year, along with a whole set of problems associated with those reptiles. They are considered an invasive species, and they've become more than just a nuisance.
Florida, sunshine, beaches, and iguanas. Lots of iguanas.
These iguanas mostly eat plants, however, occasionally they are known to eat a bird or two.
These green lizards lounge on fences, munch on plants, and occasionally may terrify gardeners with their prehistoric vibes.
All over the world, and here in Florida, weather is cooling down, and ironically, that is the start of the mating season for invasive green iguanas.
With millions of them crawling across the state, you might wonder, why aren't Floridians just frying them up for dinner? Turns out, the answer isn't as simple as it seems. From laws and health concerns to cultural quirks and economics, there's a wild mix of reasons keeping iguanas off the menu, and we're about to break them all down. The green menace. Iguanas in Florida. Florida. Sunshine, beaches, theme parks, and iguanas. Lots of iguanas.
But FWC says these iguanas are trouble. They harm wildlife. They're not native.
If you've spent time in South Florida, you've probably spotted them sunbathing on fences, lumbering across sidewalks, or peeking out from storm drains like tiny prehistoric sentinels. They're big, they're green, and they're basically everywhere. Millions of them. And if you're a gardener, or just someone who likes walking outside without a lizard-sized heart attack, you might be wondering, how did Florida become the ultimate iguana paradise? And why aren't we eating them already? First, a little backstory. Green iguanas, or iguana if you want to get fancy, aren't originally from the Sunshine State. Their roots trace back to Central and South America, tropical regions with lush vegetation, warm weather, and plenty of predators keeping them in check. In Florida, however, they found a different reality. The warm climate? Perfect. Gardens full of flowers and vegetables? Buffet style. Almost no natural predators to keep their numbers in check? Jackpot. It's basically like Mother Nature accidentally installed an all-inclusive luxury resort for iguanas.
It's a number she says has gotten worse in the last month, the same time that the Lake Worth Community High School pool got demolished after iguanas invaded the complex.
And once they arrived, likely through the exotic pet trade, escaped pets, and even hurricanes that released cages of iguanas, they set up camp and multiplied. Fast. And multiply they did. Green iguanas are prolific breeders. A single female can lay dozens of eggs per season, burying them in the ground where the young hatch safe from most threats. With no serious predators in Florida, these iguanas thrive, moving into neighborhoods, parks, golf courses, and canals with ease. Their adaptability is remarkable. They're excellent swimmers, can climb trees like tiny dragons, and have impressive tails that can lash out in self-defense. Some even survive minor car accidents and come back for more. Resilient, resourceful, and frankly, a little intimidating. Now you might think, if they're so abundant, why aren't Floridians just frying them up for dinner? Well, here's the thing. Iguanas are edible. People in other countries eat them as a source of protein, and adventurous Floridians have experimented with iguana tacos, stews, and even fried nuggets. The meat is said to be lean, somewhat chicken-like, and surprisingly tender if prepared correctly. But here's where things get tricky. Iguanas can carry parasites and bacteria that are risky to humans. Handling and cooking them safely requires knowledge, care, and sometimes permits. It's not as simple as grabbing one off your backyard fence and tossing it in a pan. Beyond health concerns, there's the legal angle. Florida has regulations that control the harvesting of wild animals, including invasive species. While iguanas are considered invasive and can be removed under certain circumstances, there are limits on selling, distributing, or commercializing their meat. So even if someone wanted to start an iguana-themed food truck, they'd run into a tangle of laws and permits that make the venture far from easy. And that's assuming you could handle the logistics of collecting millions of lizards, a task that's more chaotic than it sounds. Of course, we can't ignore the cultural factor. Floridians are used to weird foods: fried alligator, frog legs, and yes, even turtle soup have made appearances in local cuisine. But there's something about iguanas that triggers the ick factor. They're too big, too scaly, too obviously prehistoric to feel appetizing to the general public. Eating them hasn't caught on culturally, despite their numbers and availability. Psychology plays a huge role. People are generally fine eating a cow or chicken, but a backyard lizard? That crosses a line for most folks. Ecologically, iguanas are more than just backyard nuisances.
Joe Wazalewski was our iguana guide. He was the guy who helped us figure out what was happening with the iguanas.
They damage landscaping, chew through ornamental plants, and dig burrows that can destabilize seawalls and sidewalks. For homeowners and local governments, controlling them is expensive and often frustrating. Yet, despite the headaches, these green invaders persist. They are a perfect storm of biology, climate, and human inaction, thriving, multiplying, and mocking our attempts at control.
The green iguana, originally from Central and South America, was introduced to Puerto Rico in the 1970s.
So the green menace isn't just a funny Instagram moment. It's a living example of how an invasive species can adapt, flourish, and interact with human society in surprising ways. Iguanas in Florida are a mix of natural marvel, ecological challenge, and culinary curiosity, all rolled into one. And while they might look like dinner for some, the reality of safety, law, logistics, and culture keeps millions of them off our plates. For now, Floridians will continue to coexist with these scaly neighbors, watching them lounge on fences, gnaw on hibiscus, and remind us that nature always finds a way. Next, we'll explore why Floridians haven't really embraced eating iguanas, diving into culture, psychology, and the quirky food taboos that keep these lizards off the menu. Eating wild animals in Florida. Florida is a weird place when it comes to food. Sure, you've got the classic staples like seafood, key lime pie, and Cuban sandwiches, but venture off the beaten path and things get a little exotic. Floridians aren't strangers to unconventional eats. Alligator meat? Totally normal. Frog legs? Yep. Served fried or in gumbo. Even turtle soup has its fans. So why, with millions of iguanas lurking around, hasn't anyone made these scaly reptiles a statewide delicacy? Part of the answer lies in culture, or more accurately, cultural perception. Humans are funny about what they consider food. Alligators and frogs have been normalized over decades through hunting traditions, restaurants, and even media coverage. Iguanas, on the other hand, carry a certain ick factor. They look prehistoric, they scuttle quickly, and let's be honest, they have a tail that screams prehistoric danger lizard. Eating an iguana isn't just a culinary decision. It's a psychological hurdle. People often say, I could eat a chicken or fish, but a lizard? No way. Even among adventurous eaters, iguana meat hasn't caught on.
Cook them at too hot of a heat, they burn and they don't finish all the way through. You want that dough and all the iguana meat to be cooked all the way through.
Some Floridians have experimented, trying it in tacos, stews, or fried iguana nuggets. The meat is lean, surprisingly tender, and reportedly tastes like a mix between chicken and rabbit. But these attempts are mostly niche. You won't see iguana tacos at a mainstream restaurant or iguana meat in your local grocery store. It hasn't entered the collective palate, and without demand, there's no incentive for large-scale harvesting. Part of the cultural resistance is also tied to pet perceptions.
Because we're iguana hunting. Well, not us, but people here in South Florida, as the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission has declared open season on these scaly creatures.
Many Floridians have seen iguanas as pets, or at least as cute or quirky backyard creatures rather than food. Unlike chickens, pigs, or cows, iguanas don't have a long history of domestication or human consumption in the U.S. This makes people hesitant to even consider them edible. there's a mental disconnect. Cute backyard lizard versus food on my plate. And that line is surprisingly hard for people to cross. Then there's the social element. Eating iguanas isn't just about taste. It's about how society views it. People are influenced by peer behavior. If nobody around you eats iguanas, it feels taboo or risky to try. Compare that to alligator meat, which has been culturally normalized through restaurants, festivals, and even hunting shows. Iguanas just haven't had that cultural exposure. It's not inherently gross, it's unfamiliar, and humans tend to mistrust unfamiliar foods. Interestingly, some communities in other countries have long embraced iguana as a source of protein. In parts of Central and South America, iguana meat has been a traditional staple for centuries.
The iguana legs I cooked in the pan are a lot chewier than the ones I cooked in the oven, so, learned a little something there. So not overcooking it appears to be a big deal.
It's considered lean, nutritious, and even a delicacy in certain dishes. But in Florida, that tradition hasn't crossed over. The state's history, climate, and culinary culture didn't naturally set the stage for iguana cuisine to take root. Instead, we have millions of lizards running wild, and only a handful of brave culinary experiments. Finally, humor and novelty play a role. Online, you'll see memes joking about frying iguanas like chicken.
Have our boning knife, we're gonna hold it against the bone. We're gonna carve that iguana meat just like that, right off the bone, like how you would a piece of chicken.
Iguana tacos, or backyard lizard barbecues. It's funny, but it reinforces the idea that iguanas are more of a joke than actual food. That humor, while entertaining, subtly keeps them in the not food category. Until someone seriously markets iguana as a legitimate protein source, the cultural perception won't change. Even if Florida's residents are adventurous eaters in general, cultural psychology, novelty, and perception all combine to keep iguanas off the menu. They're everywhere, but people still recoil at the idea of biting into one. It's a fascinating clash of biology and culture. The iguanas thrive physically, yet remain largely untouched by human appetite. Even if you're brave enough to consider iguana tacos, Florida's laws and health rules are ready to slam the brakes on your culinary adventure. Laws, regulations, and health. Okay, so now we've established two key things. Florida is crawling with iguanas, and most people aren't culturally primed to eat them. But even if you could get past the ick factor and the psychological hurdles, there's another wall standing in your way. Laws, regulations, and health concerns. Florida's regulatory landscape is complex, and for good reason. Invasive species, food safety, and public health all collide in this scaly conundrum. First up, the legal side of things. Green iguanas are officially classified as an invasive species in Florida. That means they aren't native, and they can cause serious harm to ecosystems, agriculture, and property. On the surface, that might make you think, great, if they're invasive, why not just eat them? But it's not that simple. Florida law allows residents to remove invasive iguanas from private property, but selling or distributing the meat commercially is heavily regulated. This is partly to prevent overharvesting of wildlife, partly to protect public health, and partly to avoid unintended ecological consequences. You see, wild animals can carry all kinds of pathogens. Iguanas themselves aren't inherently dangerous, but like many reptiles, they can be vectors for salmonella, parasites, and other bacteria. Handling, cleaning, and cooking iguana meat safely requires care and knowledge. For example, the intestinal tracts of iguanas may harbor harmful bacteria that can contaminate the meat if not properly prepared. Even seasoned hunters in Florida caution that the meat must be thoroughly cleaned and cooked at high temperatures to avoid illness. For a casual backyard chef, this can be daunting. Then there are food safety regulations enforced by the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, FDACS, and federal agencies. These regulations exist to ensure that meat sold commercially is safe for consumption. Unlike farmed chicken or beef, wild iguana meat hasn't been through a regulated supply chain. That means there's no guarantee of hygiene, disease testing, or consistent quality. A commercial restaurant serving wild iguana would face a mountain of inspections, permits, and liability issues, essentially making large-scale iguana dining a legal nightmare. Hunting and harvesting rules add another layer of complexity. While you can remove iguanas from your property, there are restrictions on how, when, and where you can do it. You can't just grab a machete and start culling lizards in public parks or protected areas. That's illegal and can result in fines. Permits may be required for certain removal methods, especially if you plan to transport, store, or sell the meat. The combination of paperwork, legal uncertainty, and health risks has kept most Floridians from seeing iguanas as a practical food source. Health concerns aren't just hypothetical. Reptiles like iguanas can carry a variety of parasites, including protozoans and worms that could potentially infect humans if meat isn't cooked properly. Salmonella is the big one. This bacteria can live on the skin, in the digestive tract, and even on surfaces the iguana touches. Cooking thoroughly kills the bacteria, but mishandling during cleaning or preparation can easily lead to infection. For most people, the effort and risk outweigh the novelty of trying an iguana taco. Even beyond immediate health risks, there's the unknown long-term effects. Unlike commonly consumed animals, iguanas haven't been studied extensively as a regular food source. While anecdotal evidence from other countries suggests the meat is safe when prepared correctly, Florida's health authorities would never greenlight widespread consumption without rigorous testing. That adds another hurdle to turning backyard iguanas into a mainstream menu item. Interestingly, the law also intersects with ecological considerations. Florida wants residents to control iguana populations, but indiscriminate hunting or commercial collection could have unintended consequences. For example, overharvesting in one area might encourage iguanas from surrounding regions to migrate, or improperly disposed carcasses could attract other pests. The state's approach is cautious. Encourage removal where necessary, but prevent exploitation or practices that could backfire environmentally. Some adventurous Floridians have tried to navigate these regulations creatively. Backyard hunters sometimes use iguanas in personal meals or small gatherings. There are niche restaurants or pop-ups that have served iguana as a novelty, typically sourced from private, regulated removals. But these are exceptions rather than the rule. The regulatory hurdles, combined with health risks, keep the majority of Floridians from seriously considering iguanas as food. Finally, there's the public perception and liability issue. Even if someone ignores the health warnings, cooks a lizard at home, and shares it at a party, the moment someone gets sick, there's legal trouble. Florida's health and liability regulations exist for a reason. People could get hurt, and the state wants to avoid preventable outbreaks. This combination of law, health, and liability creates a perfect storm that keeps the green menace uneaten by the masses. In short, while culture and psychology explain part of the iguana dining problem, laws and health concerns are the real gatekeepers. Iguanas may be everywhere, but without proper permits, training, and preparation, eating them isn't just weird, it's risky and often illegal. Between salmonella scares, parasite risks, and strict state regulations, the average Floridian is better off sticking to chicken nuggets and fried alligator than attempting a backyard iguana feast. But even if taste buds weren't an issue, turning Florida's iguanas into a profitable meal isn't as easy as it sounds. The economics are a wild mess. Economics of eating iguanas. So far, we've looked at the iguanas themselves, cultural hang-ups, and the tangled web of laws and health risks. But there's another big piece of the puzzle keeping Floridians from frying up a backyard lizard: money. Believe it or not, turning millions of iguanas into dinner plates isn't as simple as grabbing a pan and a spatula. It's an economics problem on a reptilian scale. First off, let's talk numbers. Florida has millions of iguanas, but they're scattered across neighborhoods, parks, canals, and private properties. Collecting enough of them to supply even a small restaurant consistently is a logistical nightmare. Unlike farmed chicken or cows, iguanas aren't rounded up in pens. Each one has to be caught individually, often in tough-to-access areas. That means manpower, time, and equipment, all of which cost money. Even if you could gather enough iguanas, processing them is another hurdle. Wild iguanas need to be cleaned, skinned, gutted, and prepared safely. That's not something you can do casually at home if you want to sell it to the public. You'd need a licensed facility, trained staff, and strict hygiene protocols. Setting up that kind of operation requires serious capital. And when you factor in permits, inspections, and liability insurance, suddenly your backyard iguana venture starts looking like a full-blown business startup, expensive, complicated, and high risk. Then there's the market side. Even if someone could overcome all these challenges, would people actually pay for iguana meat? The answer? Probably not enough to make it profitable. While niche restaurants have offered iguana dishes, they're mostly novelty items, priced high for curious diners. Scaling that up to a statewide operation is tough. Consumers are used to chicken, beef, and pork, meats that are cheap, widely available, and familiar. Iguana meat, despite being lean and healthy, doesn't have the same built-in demand. Without a guaranteed market, businesses won't risk investing in the infrastructure needed to harvest and process iguanas on a large scale. Another economic issue is incentive misalignment. Iguanas are technically pests, and controlling them is expensive for homeowners and municipalities. But unlike crops, livestock, or valuable natural resources, they don't generate income. Catching iguanas takes effort, and most Floridians don't see a financial reward for their labor. Even if you wanted to start a catch-and-eat business, it's more cost-effective to let the state handle removal programs or simply ignore them. Cheaper, less risky, and zero legal headaches. Transportation is another overlooked factor. Iguanas are perishable like any other meat. Once caught, they need to be transported carefully to prevent contamination. That requires refrigerated vehicles, storage facilities, and distribution networks, all costly infrastructure. Compare this to standard meat industries, where farms, slaughterhouses, and distribution channels are optimized over decades. A wild iguana operation would be pieced together from scratch, making it extremely expensive per pound of meat. Even small-scale attempts face challenges. Some enterprising locals have tried to sell iguana meat at farmers' markets or online, but they often run into regulatory red tape. Without the proper licenses, inspections, and proof of safety, selling wild iguana meat is illegal. That means even if there's a tiny niche market willing to pay, entrepreneurs can't legally tap into it easily. Combine that with the effort required to catch, clean, and transport the animals, and it's no wonder iguanas haven't become Florida's next food craze. Finally, consider opportunity cost. Resources spent catching and processing iguanas could often be better spent elsewhere. Hunters, chefs, and small business owners have plenty of safer, more profitable ventures available: alligator meat, exotic fruits, or even traditional seafood. Investing time and money into iguanas is risky, low reward, and logistically messy. Even if Floridians overcame cultural hesitation and legal hurdles, economics still throws a huge wrench in the works. Collecting, processing, and distributing millions of lizards safely and profitably is a monumental challenge. Without a viable market or large-scale infrastructure, it's far cheaper and easier to leave them be, or let professional removal teams handle them. Now, we dive into the wild side, how iguanas shake up Florida's ecosystems and why eating them isn't exactly the silver bullet solution. Ecological role and consequences. Iguanas aren't just backyard nuisances or potential dinner options, they're living, breathing players in Florida's ecosystem. whether we like it or not. To understand why millions of these green lizards roam the state unchecked, it helps to look at their ecological impact. From devouring plants to burrowing into infrastructure, iguanas affect native species, neighborhoods, and even the balance of ecosystems in ways both subtle and dramatic. First, let's talk plants. Green iguanas are primarily herbivores, and they have a voracious appetite. Hibiscus bushes, orchids, tomatoes, and even young palm trees can disappear overnight thanks to their snacking habits. For homeowners and gardeners, it's maddening. Your perfectly curated tropical garden can turn into a lizard buffet in a matter of hours. But ecologically, their plant eating has ripple effects. By consuming certain plant species more heavily than others, iguanas can shift the composition of local flora. Native plants sometimes get crowded out, and ornamental species that humans favor may be damaged, creating a conflict between ecological balance and human landscaping preferences. Burrowing is another way iguanas affect Florida's landscape. Female iguanas dig nests in the ground to lay eggs, creating tunnels that can destabilize sidewalks, seawalls, and drainage systems. These burrows might seem harmless, but over time, they can cause significant structural damage, costing homeowners and municipalities serious money. While this isn't a direct ecological effect, it's an example of how an invasive species can interact with human-altered environments in unexpected ways. Predation is also worth noting. Florida doesn't have many natural predators that target adult iguanas, while some birds of prey, snakes, and raccoons might eat juveniles. Adults are mostly safe from predation. This lack of natural checks allows populations to explode, creating more pressure on vegetation and infrastructure. In their native habitats, predators and competition keep their numbers in balance, but in Florida, they are near the top of the food chain, with humans as the only significant threat. Iguanas also interact with other invasive species. For example, they share habitats with invasive plants, feral pigs, and exotic birds. These interactions can lead to unpredictable ecological consequences. Iguanas may compete with other herbivores for food, or they may help spread certain plants through seed dispersal. In some ways, they're integrated into Florida's ecosystem, but it's a precarious balance, one that can tip quickly if populations grow unchecked. Interestingly, iguanas can also indirectly affect native wildlife. By consuming large amounts of vegetation, they may reduce cover and food sources for small mammals, birds, and insects. Nesting birds, for example, might find it harder to hide their eggs if iguana grazing strips, shrubs, and undergrowth. Juvenile iguanas themselves can become prey for hawks and snakes, creating a limited but important predator-prey loop that partially offsets their abundance. Despite these impacts, humans haven't fully leveraged consumption as a control method. Eating iguanas might seem like a simple solution, but as we've explored, cultural barriers, laws, health concerns, and economics make it impractical on a large scale. Professional removal programs remain the main approach to keeping populations in check. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission occasionally encourages culling in certain areas, and private pest control operators can remove them from private property. Still, with millions of lizards roaming the state, complete eradication is unlikely. The story of Florida iguanas.
Florida is dealing with a growing problem, invasive iguanas, and the race is on to find a solution.
Is a classic example of how invasive species disrupt ecosystems. Their arrival shows how human activity, in this case, the pet trade and accidental releases, can have long-lasting ecological consequences. These lizards are efficient, adaptable, and tough to control, making them a permanent part of Florida's environment. While they provide occasional novelty and even a niche culinary opportunity, their ecological footprint is significant. Gardeners, ecologists, and policymakers alike have to navigate the tension between coexistence and control, finding strategies that minimize damage without overreacting to their presence. Ultimately, the ecological role of iguanas highlights a bigger lesson. Invasive species management is complicated. It's not just about numbers or nuisance. It's about understanding how species interact with each other, with native flora and fauna, and with human communities. Iguanas are hardy survivors, thriving in Florida not because humans feed them, but because they've adapted to an environment with few predators and abundant resources. Any solution, whether human consumption or removal programs, has to account for these ecological realities. So, how can Florida actually tackle its iguana problem without turning the entire state into a lizard-themed buffet? What Florida can and should do. All right, so we've covered the iguanas themselves, cultural hang-ups, laws, economics, and ecology. Now comes the big question. If eating millions of iguanas isn't practical, what can Florida do about them? Fortunately, there are strategies, programs, and even some creative ideas that can help manage this green invasion, and maybe even make life a little easier for humans, pets, and the environment alike. First, let's talk about removal programs. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, FWC, already encourages residents to remove iguanas from private property when they become a nuisance. Homeowners are allowed to capture or euthanize iguanas on their property.
And all the efforts that I've made be destroyed by the iguanas is very, very frustrating.
Which is a step in the right direction. Some pest control companies specialize in invasive reptile removal, helping neighborhoods keep numbers down. These programs work best when coordinated, because removing iguanas from one area without considering surrounding habitats often leads to new lizards moving in, like a never-ending game of whack-a-lizard. Education is another powerful tool. Many Floridians don't realize the impact iguanas can have on landscaping, infrastructure, and native wildlife. By raising awareness, residents can take preventive measures, fencing gardens, removing plants iguanas love, and sealing burrows.
Well, what these iguanas do is they come out here and they eat the flowers,
which reduces the need for extreme measures later. Community education campaigns can also clarify what's legal and safe, helping residents avoid fines or unsafe handling. A little knowledge goes a long way when you're dealing with a reptilian army. Some municipalities have explored hunting programs or incentives. Imagine a scenario where residents are encouraged to safely catch iguanas and bring them to designated drop-off points, possibly for regulated processing or disposal. This approach could reduce populations in heavily affected areas and turn a nuisance into a manageable task. While large-scale commercial consumption isn't practical yet, small, controlled programs could serve as both population control and community engagement. Creative incentive programs, gift cards, local recognition, or small cash rewards could even motivate participation. Technological solutions also have potential. Some researchers are experimenting with humane traps, remote monitoring, and tracking systems to better understand iguana movements and population density. By knowing where iguanas congregate, officials can target removal efforts more effectively, reducing damage to landscaping and infrastructure while minimizing ecological disruption. Drones, cameras, and even smart sensors could become tools in the battle against these green invaders. There's also room for culinary creativity on a small scale. While the mass-market idea of iguana tacos may be unrealistic,
if you ever go on an iguana hunt, if you come home and you're like, hey, we're gonna eat iguana for dinner, everyone's gonna be like, I'm leaving, I'm going somewhere else for dinner.
small pop-ups, private events, and culinary experiments can turn iguana meat into a controlled novelty. This won't solve the ecological problem, but it can raise awareness, spark conversation, and provide limited population control in areas where it's safe and legal. Florida's adventurous foodie culture might just embrace these tiny, experimental efforts as part of the broader solution. Collaboration is key. Controlling invasive species like iguanas isn't something individuals can do alone.
These iguanas are so invasive. They laid all these nests underneath the brand new patio. They tunneled underneath there. I had to have the stone replaced.
It requires coordination between homeowners, communities, wildlife agencies, and researchers. Sharing strategies, reporting sightings, and cooperating with removal programs all contribute to keeping populations in check. Some areas have successfully reduced local iguana numbers by combining public education, active removal, and community incentives. Scaling these efforts statewide is challenging, but not impossible with the right coordination. Finally, prevention matters just as much as removal. Limiting new introductions of iguanas through the pet trade, educating potential pet owners, and enforcing strict import and release laws can reduce the risk of new populations taking hold. Preventing the problem from growing is far easier than trying to reverse decades of invasive species success. In short, Florida needs a multi-layered strategy: prevention, removal, education, and innovative management. In the end, eating iguanas may make for funny memes or curious culinary adventures.
Have our boning knife. We're gonna hold it against the bone. We're gonna carve that iguana meat just like that.
But it isn't the practical solution to Florida's reptilian problem. Instead, thoughtful management, community involvement, and creative approaches offer the best chance of living alongside these green invaders without letting them eat your hibiscus or undermine your seawalls. With a mix of regulation, education, and hands-on solutions, Florida can strike a balance, keeping its landscapes and neighborhoods intact while acknowledging that some of these iguanas are here to stay. Florida's iguanas may be everywhere, but managing them takes more than frying them up for dinner. Stay curious and hit subscribe for more wild, quirky explorations. Thanks for watching.